clicking pictures. At least they didn't have a kid with them. Too many times, Graham had been forced to intervene when someone tried to shove their child on the back of a wild animal. Not a lot of things made him angry, but that always managed to send his blood pressure sky high. "He's either going to kill you or date you," Graham warned. "He's got emotional problems." They were utterly oblivious, which was exactly why Moose Springs had one of the highest rates of human injuries by moose encounter in the entire state of Alaska. Not the animal's fault either. Still, if one of these days the bull moose with a crush on Graham's truck ended up hurting someone, a fish and game warden would have to come and either relocate Ulysses or put him down. Neither of which the moose deserved. "Take a picture of us with him." The woman's eyes widened with excitement as her companion continued an endless series of selfies with the oblivious Ulysses in the background. "Hard pass on that. Okay, Ulysses, take a hike, lover boy. You'll have to come back another day." Graham clapped his hands in warning. He and this moose had known each other for a while, and they'd come to an understanding. Graham wouldn't use rock salt pellets to drive him away if Ulysses didn't trample his customers. The moose stared at Graham in disappointment, glared at the strangers, then grudgingly moved along. The couple muttered in equal disappointment, but Graham's sympathy was with the moose. The unending influx of tourists tended to ruin Graham's days, too. Behind him, the music grew louder. Someone must have discovered the volume button on the back of the jukebox. "I'm going in there," Graham said cheerfully at the couple as he turned to head back into the diner. "Try to make good choices." Visitors to town rarely did. Walking into the unmanned and packed diner only proved Graham's theory. When Graham opened the tourist trap, he'd meant the whole thing as a joke. He'd never wanted to sling burgers for a living, much less own his own place. All he wanted was to eat free cheeseburgers behind the counter and choose whatever he wanted to watch on the television in the corner. That, and a way to pay his bills while not having to answer to anyone. For some reason, being a yes man just wasn't in Graham's genetic makeup. Unfortunately, yes was the word he said most often these days, followed by asking if someone wanted fries with that. When Graham turned the tiny rundown pizza joint down the road from Moose Springs Resort into an equally rundown one-man diner, he assumed it would be the type of place where only locals would eat. The last thing he'd expected was for any of the wealthy, entitled tourists to actually go there. With 3 things on the menu, it barely counted as serving food. Graham had a beer and liquor license, but he refused to make anything that required a blender or a master's degree to remember the ingredients. There wasn't even a sign above the door, just the shadow of wood paneling once covered by plastic letters spelling pizza. And yet, there they were, filling the tourist trap to the stuffing point and waiting in line because Graham refused to hire anyone, which meant working his tail off on any given Tuesday. For the record, Graham hated Tuesdays. They always ended up more trouble than they were worth. In his defense, there had only been a couple of people in line when he'd gone outside for his break. Graham hadn't planned on having to shoo away a perfectly innocent moose from his romantic aspirations. Now, there were 3 times as many customers, with the line running all the way to the front door. With a deep sigh of disappointment in his establishment, Graham scrubbed his hands clean and took his place behind the counter. Purgatory was located somewhere between the flat-top grill to his right and the fryer behind him. "You abandoned ship." From his spot of dubious safety behind his counter, Graham looked up at the familiar voice. "Even prisoners get time in the yard, Elle." Graham winked at the woman sauntering toward him. "I almost stayed out there." Wrapped in a dress that could make one's mouth water, Lana Montgomery didn't just stand out in a crowd. She was the center of